Into it for those of you who are tuning into another Continuing Conversations. I'm Michael Dismuke, quite impulsive sometimes, and I'm a blogger on Continuing Missions, STA, which is Star Trek Adventures #1 fan site. Also, I do freelance writing for Star Trek Adventures RPG. Jim Johnson is on the ropes right now. You want to introduce yourself?
Yep, Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Mendipius Entertainment.
All right, fantastic. This is the very first time I want to tell everyone that I went ahead and hit the live stream Facebook option on Zoom because I was purely curious. So some people are listening in. One person is listening in right now. And just give the opportunity for them to ask questions as we go through here. Just a new way to do it. Continuing Missions is all about fan service. I know Jim Johnson, project manager, is all about listening to the fans too. And so we care about what you think because you're buying the books, you're playing the game, and all that input is important. And last week, we talked about the Command Division Supplemental Rulebook. And this week, we're going to be focusing on the Operations Division Supplemental Rulebook, which came out in 2018, right, Jim?
I think so, yes. 18 or maybe 19. A lot of these books were delayed for one reason or another. So a glut of them came out about the same time. And I don't remember at this point if it was 2018 or 2019. I'd have to probably look at the, let me see if I can pull up the...
2018 for sure.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the print on it. Yeah. So I thought what we would do, just like we did last time, we're going to kind of go chapter through chapter and talk about the highlights. One of the things that I've been seeing on social media quite a bit lately is there are people who really rely heavily on these division source books, command, operations, science, in order to build really specific games. The core rulebook is awesome. We know that. But these three rulebooks, give us a quick review, Jim. Why did you decide to go ahead and break it out into the three divisions?
Well, just because it really made sense to fit the Star Trek Federation Starfleet mold, right? You got your three department colors, and your three division colors, and the way the game was structured with command, con, science, medical, security, and operations, it just made sense to have those three divisions be some of the key splat books that we released after the core book. So this was an opportunity to do a deeper dive on each division and give players, to give players more options for their characters, but also to give game masters more options for getting those types of characters involved to make sure that everybody has something to do at the game table and that you don't have certain types of characters just, kind of waiting for something to do.
Yeah, one of the things I really liked about the book, and we'll talk about it today, we highlighted it last time, is that you have red, blue, and yellow plot components. Mm-hmm. So that no matter what role you choose, you still have something to do. And I think that's one of the powers of the book is that we've been hearing a lot of chatter lately about I'm a medical officer, I'm a counselor, and I don't have anything to do. These books give every character something to do no matter what type of mission, right?
That's right. Yep. When I created the plot components for the command book, we just carried that on into these two books, and I'm glad that the lead writers on these other two books kind of carried it forward and made these three books even more consistent, right? Which was really nice, so that the players and game masters, they had that kind of stuff to work with.
Good. Like we did last time, we're going to go through chapter by chapter, look at some of the art. Jim's going to tell us about some of the cool Easter eggs that are in there. And then we're also going to be able to focus on really what the role of operations characters are. So just as an overview, who's included in the operations division? Which type of characters are we focusing on with that, Jim?
Operations are your engineers and your security/tactical officers, primarily. Everybody who's wearing red in the original series and Enterprise eras, or gold in Next Generation and later.
Yeah, exactly. Makes it easier for us to remember. All right. So as a way of introduction to this book, is there anything you want to point out before we start breaking it down for everybody?
Nothing specific. This was the division books were done when Sam Webb was the line manager, and so I didn't have quite as much input into these books as I did the later books in the line after 2019 or so. So there's some stuff in here that I certainly touched as a writer or an editor. But as far as the overall development of the book, at least especially this one, I didn't really have a huge amount of involvement in it. I had my hands all over the command book, which is kind of the template for these 3 books. But as far as deep details on this one, I'll do the best I can. But honestly, I didn't see a lot of this book until it was in until it needed to be edited and then proofread once it got into the layout.
Okay, well, to frame the conversation for people who are maybe new to the line, let's focus this in the TNG area, next generation, because then we can focus on characters that are kind of operations strong or security strong. So when it comes to, if you were to say, hey, who are the operations characters that we want to have in mind as we go through this book, what are some that would stand out to you?
You mean like specific characters?
Yeah, a couple, just to get a frame of reference. If we're
sure. I mean, you got Uhura, Scotty, Malcolm Reed, Trip Tucker, of course. Then you've got Geordi, Data, Worf, Tasha Yar, Chief O'Brien. I could go on, right?
Yeah.
Those are the high points, at least through chunk of DS9 there. And then Voyager, of course, you've got Tuvok and Harry Kim and B'Elanna Torres.
Yeah.
And then of course Discovery. You've got different cast of characters there too.
Exactly. You have people who even went from 2 different divisions. I think that Non, I think that's her name. She went from engineering to security in Discovery. So really just give you an idea that this is actually a really rich array of characters that can play in operations, from transporter chief to communications to ops to security to brig officer. So a really exciting line of career track that you could pick if you go to the academy with these. With that said, why don't we jump into chapter 2 about fleet operations? And I noticed that it covered several different subjects, which included mission operations, science operations, tactical operations, shipyard operations. And this all kind of reminded me of the Starfleet Corps of Engineers. And that was a very popular novel series. I've read about 4 of them myself. And basically, the point of the matter being is that engineering officers are spread out all over the Federation, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so with what's one of the things that you would point out as your highlight for an operations character, someone deciding on this career track?
Well, I mean, just the wealth of opportunities to do different things. From a mechanical game standpoint, your engineers are going to be the ones who probably get a huge amount of stuff to do in any given game session, because there's so much technological stuff and science stuff, and not so much science, but like the technology. You're probably on a ship or a space station. Those things have a tendency to break or get damaged. And so you're always going to be on the front lines of getting those fixed up, managing the shuttles, managing all the equipment on the ship. That's all your purview. Just all kinds of opportunities to get your hands dirty with alien technology, alien tech, weird, interesting things that are coming up that give you an opportunity to spout some technobabble if you're into that kind of thing. So yeah, lots of opportunities for operations characters. And then if you're a security tactical, right, there's always, I mean, especially in the original series era, there's always an opportunity to get into fisticuffs with bad guys or strange and interesting creatures, right? New civilizations, meet them, beat them up, and then become friends with them. There's opportunity, space battles. You're always going to be involved in space battles because you're firing the phasers and managing the shields and all that good stuff. So yeah, there's plenty of stuff for the ops people to get involved with.
Yeah, I think about it too. Going back to the Starfleet Corps of Engineers idea is that there are ships out there who are actually captained by engineers, meaning that they are given a specific task, like to go and do reclaim or salvage of a Starfleet vessel or an alien vessel, or to go repair a colony. And the captains are actually engineering-based characters. So one of the things I know we talk about a lot on continuing conversation is not to cubbyhole yourself into what you've just seen on TV. Mm-hmm. There's so much in the novels and comic books. And I thought that these books, the operations division especially, has so many different options for an operations character and the kind of game you want to play. You may want to play a technobabble heavy game. And I think operations or sciences, but in this case, we're talking about operations, leans toward that heavily. But what also people want to play sometimes is the Section 31 angle. And that kind of plays into Starfleet intelligence, which also is covered in Chapter 2.2. And so what are the intelligence angles that you were thinking about, Jim, when you were all designing this division book?
Yeah, and I apologize, Michael. Your audio cut out right in the middle of that question. So if you could repeat it, that would be great.
Sure. So what I was saying is Chapter 2.2 talks about Starfleet intelligence. And right now, Section 31 is getting a lot of attention. And also a lot of the different intelligence agencies in Star Trek, whether it be the Tal Shiar or the Obsidian Order. So when it came to this chapter on Starfleet intelligence, what kind of options were you trying to open up for players?
I think I got you cut out again. I think I got the sense of what you're asking, though.
Oh no!
That's like the third or fourth time it's cut on Facebook, but that's just a guess.
You know what? I'm going to actually pause it. Then more important than that is our actual streaming. So I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah, it's unusual for your audio to be stuttering like it is tonight. So I'm not sure if it's my network or if it's coming from your end.
Okay, everyone, I'm stopping live stream. You'll see the show when it's over, because more important is a good, clean episode. We tried something. We'll see what happens.
Anyway, so I think these two chapters, the one on Starfleet intelligence and then the one on Section 31, gives you a lot of opportunities to run different kinds of games that you wouldn't normally run, like in a traditional Starfleet kind of sense. Like you wouldn't run a traditional Next Gen series or a traditional Voyager series or something. This is a way to do something different. I think one of the things I like about the intelligence type of game is that you could do it with a smaller number of players. I think it would lend itself really well to like a 1 or 2 player game, where you could be on a smaller ship, like a scout ship, or maybe even like a souped up runabout. There's a fancy runabout in the Shackleton book that an intelligence officer uses from time to time. I think coupling, and this is interesting. I didn't even think about it until just now, but with the player guide release and all those new character role options in the player's guide, I think pairing that player's guide up with any of these division books will just give you that many more options to play with. Because like I think about so not specifically about intelligence, although there is an intelligence element. When I think about like lower decks and you got Division 14 doing like the medical type of stuff, that would tie right into the medical book. And I know we'll talk about that shortly. But like the California class ships, right? They're divided into 3 categories. Like you got your operations ships and you got your command ships and you got your sciences ships, right? Because they all got different color piping on them. And so if you wanted to run like a lower decks game or something, you could take the player's guide and the division game, or the division book of your choice, and like, okay, I'm going to play a Cali class ship that's operations. So you're just like the Cerritos, you got the yellow band, and you could go do support Section 31. Well, maybe not. You could support the Starfleet Corps of Engineers. You could just do different things, and all the plot hooks that are built into this operations book that I don't know if people just haven't been using it, or if they're sleeping on it, or if they just they're using it quietly. I don't hear them talked about as much as I thought I would. But there's just so much wealth of potential in here that I think maybe the player's guide will give these division books some new life, because there's so many more ways to combine them into different ways now. Even especially if you're not playing a Starfleet character, right? You could play a like a Nog or a Rom, even like be a civilian engineer on a space station or on a ship. And you still got cool important things to do, but you can also tie it into all the information that's in these books. I've gone off track a little bit, but actually intelligence now. I mean, you
actually haven't gone off track, because let's keep talking about this, because one of the reasons we filmed this and tape this podcast is to give people ideas and show them the endless universe of possibilities. What you were talking about, I'm on page 19, still in Starfleet Intelligence, where it focuses on if you want games surrounding foreign affairs, archives, experimental technology, domestic security. And what it makes me think about, Jim, as you're speaking, is some people are transferring or coming from other games outside of Star Trek Adventures, and they want to play the spy, the gritty. They don't want to play the Starfleet in the limelight always, and they want to show the dark side of the Federation or Romulans or Klingons. This game is totally open for that because of some of these plot seeds that are written in here, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even though that's not the main focus of the franchise or of the game, right? I mean, we certainly do acknowledge it. And even though, I don't know that we're ever going to focus on how to run like intelligence type games and then like a dedicated source book. I don't think that, I mean, maybe we'll see. We got so much else to do, but I think there's enough in here that if you wanted to run a kind of a covert ops, dark Federation, whatever kind of thing, there's enough in here. I think you could do it. Again, it's not my taste, but you could do it. Sure.
Right. But then we all love Michael Eddington. I mean, love to hate the guy, but that whole Michael Eddington in Deep Space Nine, he worked for the Maquis, and then of course that branches out into Voyager, in some sense. When I was going through this book about Starfleet intelligence, I was thinking about the Michael Eddingtons that Starfleet and the Federation are not always right, and there's people who are having to work multiple layers within the Federation to do what they think is right. And I think this placates those kind of players who want to be the rebel. They don't want to be the Avengers; they want to be the X-Men. Just to give an idea of a comparison. And I thought that this chapter on Starfleet intelligence is amazing because not only does it talk about the different roles you could play around an intelligence game, it talks about the different tactics. And again, I opened this up 4 years ago, right? And now that I'm reopening it again and flipping through it because of the show, I'm like, wow, it talks about infiltration, verifying intelligence, acquiring advanced technology. It's pretty dark. Some of it can be pretty dark and exciting if that's what your gaming group wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, it could be dark, right? I mean, there's certainly an element of darkness to it, and you could very easily adapt all this stuff to run a Tal Shiar game or a Zhat Vash game or a Cardassian Obsidian Order game if you wanted to, because they probably all do. I mean, every intelligence agency does the same kind of work, right? It's just different levels of what's the term? Some intelligence agencies will do more human rights violations than others, right? Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just thinking about how you like to read these books, and like I'm just glancing at it now, like even just the subheading titles are sparking all kinds of ideas for me. Like verifying intelligence, like that's something you may not necessarily think about, but like, okay, so Starfleet gets this important piece of top secret information, and they're like, well, we need to verify it. So hey, your crew or your group of player characters are pulled off of regular duty off their ship and assigned to this top secret mission. And so that gives you an opportunity to, if you're on a ship or a station, that gives you an opportunity to do something different. But it's really important because it's like, okay, we got this important tip or this important piece of information, but we have to verify it. We can't just act on it. We have to verify it before we do anything. And so you're going to go off in the black, stealth outfits like Worf and Picard and Crusher wore. So you can do that. And then managing defections, like especially in Next Generation, there were a lot of defections that they presented in Next Generation. And it's like, oh, what a great story idea. Like somebody or some species wants to defect, or do they want to defect? Maybe it's a double cross or even a triple cross, right? And that just gives you an opportunity to do a different kind of story that you don't often see in Star Trek. And you could build a whole mini arc or shoot. You could probably run a season off of that, right?
Well, and it's happened on TV because if you think about fans of Discovery season 1 and 2, if you match this chapter with the Klingon book, you have Voq all day long, right? Mm-hmm. So you basically have a Klingon who went deep on infiltration and transformed themselves into a human and infiltrated for a whole season. And then, of course, season 2 of Discovery focuses on the aftermath of that. So really, again, going through this, there's not enough time in the day for me to play all the games that I could think of.
Right.
Looking at each paragraph in here that we could explore. So that's just on Starfleet Intelligence, which could be its own show and is going to be its own show with Section 31, right? So Star Trek got it. Paramount was like, yep, let's do it. So let's talk in chapter 2.3. Let's go a little deep dive into the Starfleet Corps of Engineers. Now, that was a book that came out, 20 years ago, right? It was like a series of books.
I think the SCE started off. I want to say it started off as an ebook series. It was like an experiment books, and then after a certain point, after they got of them out, enough that they started collecting them into for SCE stories into a book and print it, right? And I think they must have done
a lot.
10 of those books, maybe 40 or 50 SCE stories, maybe more. Honestly, don't remember. I know Keith DeCanada was the was one of the primary editors, I think. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm on volume 4 myself right now.
But they were popular because they were different, right? They were telling a part of Starfleet, operations that you don't normally see on the show. Like it's referenced once in a while on the show. All the stuff you see on the show, like somebody had to build it, somebody had to maintain it, somebody had to make it happen. And that was the Starfleet Corps of Engineers. They're responsible for all that stuff. And because that's such a rich place for story and drama, and it gives player characters an opportunity to do something a little bit different than your run of the mill, like line capital ships kind of thing. That we wanted to certainly put it in here and give just more options, right? But I think partly based on how popular those novellas were, we wanted to make sure that we included it because they are popular, and it's just a cool opportunity for new stories. In fact, I think Gomez, Sonia Gomez, who appeared in a later episode of Lower Decks, I think she was one of the key characters in that in SCE for a while.
Yeah, I was really happy to see her go from TNG and into the novels and have a very prominent role into it. And so then we see her graduate in Lower Decks to captaincy, right, in the very last episode of season 2. I think one of the cool things, one of the Easter eggs that I saw was on page 24 about the Genesis cave construction, Regula. I just finished watching, because we were encouraged to. I just finished watching Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock, and we know Regula plays a big portion in that. So that was fun putting that. Was that a request, or did one of your writers surprise you with that?
Well, I mean, like I said, at the time they weren't my writers. It just one of the writers wrote it. I don't know exactly the details on how that came to be, but I mean, clearly somebody threw it in there, and it worked because I mean, it's a neat piece of story, right? I mean, somebody. Like they said it, like Carol Marcos said that they had to build it underground and do all that mining and stuff to build that underground network for the Genesis device, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's another Easter egg on 26, which is the SCE safety regulations, and again, you could build an entire story off that, where it talks about the protocol. This is, I'm not sure if this is canon. Maybe it is canon. Maybe it's pulled from a novel, but I thought it would be a really good way to frame a game and have you build extended consequences, extended tasks, implications based off violations of these safety regulations as you go through a game. So again, a lot of really good meat for game masters as they're creating it. I appreciate again that with each one of these chapters, there's different mission profiles. And what's the goal of the mission profiles again, Jim, for people who are maybe fresh to this and wonder what these subheadings are all for?
The mission profiles for space frames, right? Yeah. So if you pick when you pick your cruise ship, you pick a space frame, whether it's like an Excelsior class or Constitution class or an Oberth or whatever.
Wrong question. Sorry, that's my bad. I used the wrong term. So like on page 24, it talks about investigation of alien technologies, disaster relief, assistance with civilian projects. What are you calling those subheadings when it comes to ideas and plot seeds?
Well, in the book, they're called project profiles, which may not be the best title, but these are just these are just different types of missions that the ship could be sent upon, right? You might be tasked to do investigation of alien technologies, or maybe you're tasked with disaster relief, salvage operations, distress call responses. I mean, and that's something that you could tie to a mission profile for a ship when you're building your ship initially at the beginning of your campaign in session 0 with your fellow players, or for the game master, this could be maybe your cruise ship is just generally assigned to the Starfleet Corps of Engineers. And this is just a selection of some of the missions that they could be tasked to do, right? I can see it going both ways. Like you could do a salvage operation one episode and then do a distress call in another one. Or maybe you are a ship that is like uniquely built and tasked to do salvage operation that needs to be done. They send you, or they send ships of your class off to do it. You could build campaigns off of either one of those concepts, I think. And have plenty of cool stuff to do. Okay. So I guess in this case they're called project profiles. So they're not the same as mission profiles, which could be a little confusing. But for me, basically they're all plot hooks, right? These are all opportunities, not just plot hooks, but they're also like your crew and ship's purpose. Like what kind of stories you want to tell? Maybe your group wants to do a bunch of terraforming support missions. Maybe that's a very niche of a niche, but that just shows you how much depth is in the Star Trek universe, right? After 55 years, there's just so much there that is either implied by the setting or is like given a little breadcrumb throwaway dialogue in one line of one episode out of 1,000 episodes. But that's enough to grab and pull that thread, and all of a sudden you've got a full-blown campaign, right?
Well, and that's why I want to talk. I mean, I'm going to give, for aspiring writers out there, myself, even when I'm writing modules or mission briefs, I actually review these and I'm like, okay, what kind of profile does this fall into? Project profile is this in? And then sometimes you can throw them a curveball by saying, okay, they're on this project, but I'm throwing a distress call response or a salvage operation in at the last minute just to throw them off. Now you have to split the team. You got to get two things done at once. So these are really key for a game master to keep your game moving and to keep people on the ropes, and having to switch gears all of a sudden. It makes it very fun. It shows you really the plethora of things to do in space.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention the fact that you can mix and match these 3 books, right? So you might have a crew that's focused on salvage operations, but they're doing a salvage operation, and all of a sudden it turns into a first contact situation. Now what do you have to do? Now you have to flex a skill set that you're not really used to flexing, but you're still Starfleet. You got to get it done until the cavalry arrives, who are better suited to handle it. But you might be on the front lines of it, and you're like, well, shoot, we got to deal with it now, and so it's up to us to make it happen. And the whole fate of the Federation may lie in your hands, because what if some SCE ship was the first to discover the whale probe, right, in Star Trek 4? Like, it's up to you, and if you fail, then the entire Federation's wrecked. And so
I think about that old TNG episode where they were supposed to help with the terraforming project and ended up making a first contact. Remember, in that switch everything. It created an entire dramatic scenario between the captain and the leader of that project. So yeah, really good point. So maybe it's fun, for those of you who go back and watch the old episodes, try to figure out each episode what project profile they were working on, if they were working on one to help frame that. So again, I could go on all day about engineering, because that's one of my favorite things, is just the discovery of new technology in Star Trek. And you still devoted an entire section just to Section 31 also, though.
Yeah, I remember I was talking about this a little bit, because I know there was some developmental discussion about Section 31, because at the time we were developing this book before Discovery came out, right? So none of that mirror universe stuff had happened yet, and none of that Section 31 stuff that we see in season 2 of Discovery had happened yet. So there is that question mark of like, is Section 31 really a thing? Or is it just Sloan being by himself? Like, what's the story here? There's like 8 or 9 different possible stories of what Section 31 could have been. And so we argued that, for the purposes of the RPG, we're not going to put our foot down and say, this is what Section 31 is. So like you'll see in this chapter, especially in page 32, where we talk about the truth, right? The heading is the truth. We give you 8 or 9 different truths, 8 or 9 potential truths of what is Section 31. What isn't it? Is it a rogue agency? Is it only Sloan? Is there no Section 31 after all? I mean, what is it? Is this all rumors? And
me immensely, as I was like, I have to pick one.
Yeah. So, or you could pick several, or you could pick all of them, or none of them, right? So we wanted to leave this up to the game master and players. Like, what is Section 31? Make it up until we get confirmation from canon otherwise. And I think even now, even with the stuff that's happened in Discovery, I still don't think it's been truly, I guess Section 31 is one of those things that you can't really put into a neat box, right? Because it's so much stuff. Right. But especially season 2 of Discovery added a lot of potential stuff to Section 31. We'll just see where it goes from here.
Well, I'm starting to think that and it's funny that on page 34, you put a little box there called Temporal Investigations Interview. And I'm like, maybe they're the same. Maybe Department of Temporal Investigations and Section 31 are actually the same organization. I've been starting to wonder that after watching all the episodes involving both organizations.
Yeah. Or I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I feel like the Department of Temporal Investigation guys we saw on DS9, Luxley and Dulmer, I almost wonder if they're like really tired bureaucrats who have to like keep schlepping off into time to clean up Kirk's messes, right? And they're like, oh, we just have to do one more thing. I know it's a X-Files takeoff, but both of them felt to me more like tired veterans who are just like tired of as opposed to like Sloan being the super sneaky and all cloak and dagger and smoke and mirrors and stuff. So I don't know. There's a number of ways you could play it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's fun. Again, this opens it up for that, for people who want to be playing subterfuge and triple agents and all that kind of stuff. It definitely is fun for that. All right. And so then let's move on to operations division characters that are highlighted in chapter 3. Just like in the previous command book, we focus purely, this chapter focuses on the security division and the engineering school, and gives a lot of details about pretty much about how to build the characters, right?
Yeah, that's right. This was just designed to give you more options for your characters. So whether it's more examples of values or focuses, and more roles that you can play with. Like for tactical, there's more roles in here, like squad leader or combat engineer. So just some other things that your character could do depending on what your campaign's all about. A little bit of discussion about Mako, because I know that some fans really like the Makos from Enterprise, so we wanted to pay a little service to that. And then just more information about your life path. Different ways to focus on building your life path and your character, focused on either engineering or security, depending. And then, Nathan made sure to throw in a whole bunch of new talents for both security officers and for engineers, because, there is certainly a subset of the gaming population of this game who really likes the crunch and wants more talents, more options for characters to make them even more diverse than your average character coming out of the core rule book, right? So, bunch of new stuff to play with.
I want to highlight something super cool, and I really only noticed it on my most current read through of this on page 38. It talks about tactical roles. So maybe you don't want to play a tactical game every single one of your episodes. You want some to be a little bit more diplomatic or exploration. But maybe there is a time where your bridge crew, and going back to what you were talking about, Jim, with Worf, Picard, and Beverly Crusher, have to go in and do some kind of infiltration move. Well, how do you organize a squad? This was the first time I noticed that it breaks it down into the different roles: squad leader, explosive ordnance, combat engineer, field medic, heavy weapon specialist, and reconnaissance. And understanding that one character may have to play double or triple roles, depending on the size of your group. But I thought it was so cool because, of course, you're going to make the doctor the field medic. You're going to automatically make your security person maybe the heavy weapon specialist. But maybe your first officer happens to be a heavy weapon specialist, because you can flesh out the background at that point. If there's a very active game where you need to get into the battle, I think about the Deep Space Nine episode where they were protecting that base and Nog got his leg blown off. Everyone at that point, including Bashir, had to take on a tactical role. And so I just thought that was really cool to really dig down into this chapter and say, hey, can I plan a whole game around my bridge crew having become a battle squad? So kudos for that chapter. I thought that was really a neat section of that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, for those groups who want to do like a Starfleet Marines game or a Mako game, dig into these roles. And I mean, like if you think of the movie Aliens, right, with the Marines, I mean, you could totally do that kind of a thing with this group. Like you could have a couple people on recon, a couple heavy weapon specialists, a couple field medics, explosive ordnance. You can, and then you can fold in the roles from the core book, right? You probably got an engineer, probably got a tech head who knows the tech and can break into things. So there's a lot of options here. If folks are willing to be creative and look at the full spread of tools in front of you, right? I think that's one of the tricky things about the RPG industry right now is so much cool content gets spread across so many different books that it's hard to sometimes see the totality of your toolbox in front of you and then be able to pick pieces from all kinds of different resources, right? I mean, I wish there was a way to make it easy to take all these thousands of pages of content and put them in one place. But I mean, for a game like Star Trek, I think D&D might be the only one that can do it well with that online resource that they have, D&D Online, where you can have that gigantic compendium with absolutely everything in it. But for those of us who have, you just got to make it work. But that's where you trust the fans to come up with the amazing spreadsheets and lists and stuff of things, and so that you can look at those nice references. And again, not to belabor it, but this is the advantage of having a game that has lasted for almost 6 years, with more years to come, is that we have so much content now that the more content you have, the more useful gameable content you have, the richer your games are going to be, moving forward, right? Like I mean, I know, was I talking to you? I was talking to somebody just either today or recently about how Discovery book, coming out, just has so many starships and new aliens and new technology in it that like all of a sudden your story potential has just exponentially grown just because one book dropped. And like a lot of people are saying, well, I hate Discovery, but I like the book, which is kind of weird, but okay. Thank you for liking the book. Right. But if they find like one or two pieces of cool things in the Discovery book that makes their other games awesome, then I've done my job, and like the writers have done their job. So
well, and I gotta say too,
it's exciting.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day, for years, we all leaned on the Star Trek technical manual or whatever books we can get. And I have to compliment Modiphius because honestly, these books are becoming the reference work for Star Trek. They're not only about playing the RPG, they're about knowing the universe. And as a reference material for writers, even if you're just going to be a novelist or comics or something, and you pick up these books, you're going to get something out of them and be able to build plots off of that. I'm not plugging it. I'm just saying that I lean on it a lot as a writer books in order to come up with stories for my game and all that. So
I wish I could take that like 20-second clip of what you just said and find a way to like promote that everywhere and advertise it everywhere because it's so true. Like I know having talked, because like I wrote some Star Trek short stories ages ago, and in so doing I got to go to a lot of conventions and talk to fans and to fellow writers, and I'd say of the 50 to 100 Star Trek writers who I talked with, whether they're novelists or they were also short story writers like me, like a lot of them said, I've got the FASA books, I've got the Decipher books, I've got the Last Unicorn game books, and I'm constantly reading those for ideas to put into the fiction, right? So like I know the game stuff has gotten used. I don't know. I mean, and I might have my blinders on. I have no idea if our stuff is being used by any Star Trek writers or either on the shows, like the television shows, or just in general. Like, and I don't care really.
They would never admit it.
They would probably never admit it. Yeah.
But
I don't know.
Honestly, yeah. Why would it? I'm thinking going back to the book, page 48, the technobabble. The technobabble chart that you have there. If I was writing a novel, I would have that up on my wall and would just break right and I'd read it to figure out technobabble if I needed. As a game master, going back to the books to get the language and create the universe that you're trying to create for your players, why sit there or you can go to Memory Alpha, which I give full kudos to, and you can always search there. But how nice it is to be able to have searchable PDFs or these books also to refer to, where the language is just so clear about all of these concepts. So I know we kind of deviated off of that, but the point is if you're playing either an engineering character or a security character, these give you a lot more ideas than were just in the core rule book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to put a point on it, these books are doing what an RPG book has to do, and that's to add depth and detail to the stuff that you see on the TV screen that the producers and the writers of the shows just will never have enough time to go into detail on, right? When you've got a 45-minute TV show, you've got to hit certain points, and there's only so much backstory that you can provide, right? But like backstory is the lifeblood of an RPG and of a campaign, because like you could run whole sessions just doing those little side stories and those little subplot stories and those little interstitial things that they cut for time on the TV show. Because like, who has time to watch two people in a room talk, right? Because like you got to get to the big story. But those little stories or those little moments, those little beats where people have to have a conversation, those happen in RPGs, and those are sometimes the most rewarding parts of an RPG. And the more detail you have about your characters or what they do or what their roles are, or what is Starfleet like around them, all that adds context to what you're doing, your character, what your character's doing anyway. And so that's what these books are for, is just to provide you more context and backstory and depth and just stuff that you can play with. So I'll get off myself. Well,
No. To your point, I'm going on to chapter 4.1 actually, where it focuses about advanced technology and engineering devices. Because we see, Scotty walking around with tools. We see B'Elanna with an engineering case. What are all those? What is all that? So if a player wants to really make their character real and flesh it out and have an understanding of their character, you can look at like chapter 4.1 and see the common engineering tools. So now when you're writing your character or playing your character, you can go ahead and grab the phaser drill or grab the micro optic drill and have a brief explanation here of what it does to, again, create more realism for the game. So I really appreciated that chapter. Including the cool schematics. We talked about it before, but let's talk about it again, because I know that the designer in this one, I think, would probably be Lee Woolsey. I'll have to check the content.
Oh, this predates Lee. This was
oh wow, okay.
This was Mihal Cross. He did a lot of interiors a few years ago before he moved on to more important work within the company. But
Mihal, you get all credit for these awesome schematics.
Yeah, he did a lot of these.
Okay. Again, adding to the sense of realism of the game and really giving visuals that the players can use to get into character. I think about the LARPing. We recently did an interview with Casey Hardy about LARPing and how valuable it is to have visuals to get people into the game. Yep. And this chapter about technology really hits the mark.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of great stuff to dig into. So for your engineer characters, even your science characters, because like science and engineering are very much hand in hand throughout Star Trek, and there's just a wealth of material in here. Even just to pull, ideas out of, dig into this, because there's all kinds of cool stuff in here that you can think about. And what I also like is that the writers pulled some examples out of actual episodes. Right, you got the phasing cloak from the Pegasus. You've got the Soliton wave generator, and you got the synaptic scanning stuff. So these are all right out of Next Gen DS9, other episodes. Transwarp drive has a mention in here. So you Voyager lovers, like I know you're a big fan of Voyager, got your Transwarp drive in here.
For Game Masters, some Game Masters guidance going to some of the schematics again, like on page 60, where it has a cross section of the transporter. When I'm trying to make complications that sound realistic, I'm looking at these schematics and I'm seeing the transport chamber, the biofilter, the pattern buffer, and I'm making those the complications, that the pattern buffer is offline or the phase transition coils are slagged, and create an extended task off of that. And I can't remember all the time, so I make a quick reference to this, snap a picture of this, send it to my players and be like, this is what's broken and this is what you got to do to fix it. Transporters are offline, find a different solution.
Totally.
Yeah, so just a great, again, the schematics are such a good tool.
Yep, more tools to play with, absolutely.
Yeah, I can go through these all day. M5 Ultratronic unit on page 62. So that's from a TV show, of course. So that again is the benefit of the tools and equipment and technology section. More in talk to us about chapter 5, Jim, about using the operations divisions, what these two sections are about.
Yeah, so these are really aimed at the game master. Although a smart player could probably make use of them too. If you're a player who's developing a backstory for your character, or you like to write short stories about your character, like certain of us who are guilty of that, this is just a way to create more story potential for your character. And if you're a game master, maybe you're like, well, I need something for my chief tactical officer to do. I want to give them a red plot idea, so I'm going to roll on this random table. Like, who doesn't love a random table once in a while, right? Mm-hmm. And so we provide you some options. So like, with the theory being that red plot components focus on diplomacy, first contacts, things your command division would do. Gold plot components are about combat and engineering to some extent. And then your blue plot components are about science and technology, that kind of thing. So, that gives you a general idea as a game master. Oh, I want to do something that's science focused. Okay, so that's going to be a blue plot component. And then, so what these do then is they help you focus the story idea to the character type, right? So, like, how would an engineer deal with a science type of problem? How would a tactical officer deal with a science type of problem? It's always fun, like we see it all the time on television. Characters out of their element, fish out of water, tasked with a situation that they're not trained to do. How do they deal with it? How do they overcome that problem? How do they overcome that challenge? And this is just, more ways to generate ideas, more things to give your characters to do.
And I honestly never even thought about it before, Jim, until you said it. If a player wants to flesh out their background and they want to roll a a general plot component here, they could easily say, yeah, I was involved in an evacuation once. It didn't go so well. Grab some of the verbiage from the language here and enrich in their storyline. I honestly say the biggest, since we're a yes and game, the biggest thing that makes me happy is when my players are in a situation, fixing something in a dire situation. It's like, oh, I went through this. I once had to skydive into a gas giant back during Starfleet Academy days. It didn't go so well. So I invented, and this is a real story I'm telling, I invented a grav glider in order to make it safely. That I sit there and I'm like, yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah, let's go with that. Create an advantage. That's something you just invented to get us through this mission.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of good ideas in here. One of the things I really love is the box on page 69, which was the away team security protocols. That is really good stuff, especially if you're a security officer, that you can kind of be like, quote, regulation on protecting the captain. So I thought that was a really cool box.
Yeah, and honestly, I can't remember. I want to say, I'm certainly not going to say anything bad about the writers. I feel like some of this was inspired by the old classic Next Gen technical manual that Sternbach and Okuda put together. I think because they packed that manual so full of great content. Some of this reads similar. Now, obviously, we didn't. We would never, pull it whole cloth out of it. But just like the spirit of that technical manual infused its way into all of our stuff because it's so good, right? Like, why wouldn't you make use of it? But I just love these details. And again, this is the kind of detail that you want in your game, because that way all your players are thinking, okay, we're on an away team. What do we need? And if you're the XO, oh, I need to include a security officer, probably a medical officer, probably a technician or an engineer. And that helps the XO player pick which player characters he's going to take with him or which supporting characters or whatever, So it's just another game tool.
Yeah, I think great minds think alike. I think if people who are really diehard Star Trek fans start seeing the patterns, I can remark because on page 70, where the box about criminal investigation, I don't recall this box, honestly, when I was writing the Game Master's Guide about extended tasks, and one of them was how to conduct a forensics investigation.
Nice.
Or a criminal case. Yeah. I went and wrote that. And then later on, as we were preparing for this show, I went, oh man, I forgot this was even in here. How simple was it? I pulled up my writing and this writing. Some of it was different because of course I didn't refer to this. Sure. But it sure sounded a lot alike. So that's not unusual. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So again, so much good stuff in here with these storyline components. Unarmed combat is talked about in here, including some options for martial arts if you want to get super specific with your character. We've talked about the benefit of getting specific with your characters to make them more real, to flesh them out some more. All right. And so that was just the security storylines. And of course, we know there's engineering department storylines too, along with TV show references so people could go watch them. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I was just going to mention if we weren't going to go into too much detail on the engineering portion of it. I did take some pains to. I guess even 4 years ago, I was thinking a little bit about the new fans coming into Star Trek. Is that maybe you're a newish. I think here's what my theory was: you're a newish fan who's been encouraged to try the game out, but you don't really know Star Trek, and someone told you or suggested that you should play the engineer or a tactical officer, and you don't really know what that means. Here's a short sidebar of a handful of episodes that are really focused on that department or division. So at least you have a starting point, right? So if you're like on page 70, what am I on? 76. This is the engineering challenges, right? So like if you've got a limited amount of time and you want to get a feel for what kind of things an engineer can do, go watch any of these 5 episodes. That we were careful to pick one from each series that we had access to at the time, right? So it was Enterprise, original series, Next Gen, DS9, and Voyager. We didn't have Discovery yet. We didn't have Picard yet. So we had a slightly limited, not limited. There's still a lot of Star Trek, but we tried to keep it short and sweet, right? And give you a paragraph about each one, just to give you a sense of like, okay, here's what I should be looking for in that episode to give you a flavor for the role that you're going to be playing.
Pick some really good ones. I love the Dreadnoughts being my favorite. Of course, I love B'Elanna Torres, so yeah, that's my favorite one there.
Booby Trap is so good. I love Booby Trap. I think I really like Geordi as a character, even though he's kind of a milquetoast sometimes. But Booby Trap, like that early season 3 DS9, was so good, because there's like a string of episodes in there that were just consistently really good, and I had to include it somewhere.
Yeah. No, it sounds great. I'm gonna laugh again talking about more than one way to skin a cat, because I love page 78, derelict recovery, with all these ideas about environment, like things you may have to face if you're picking up a derelict craft, or maybe space station if it's on a moon or an asteroid. And again, these are little things that are not in the core rule book, but they're here. And I'm like, oh, I could make an entire story off of xenobiological infestation. And there's if you're a game master and you're running out of ideas, just take half an hour, pick a random page, and just start reading, and you'll have a story, which is, I think, is super cool about these chapters. Again, let's go on. I mean, again, we could break down every single page, but people have to purchase the book at some point if you want to get all the details. Let's close it out talking about operations personnel. And what is focused about the characters that were selected for this chapter?
I think if I'm not mistaken, the vast majority of these are kind of like your generic NPCs that you can slap a name onto and then customize for your game. But we wanted to add more depth to the potentials. Like, I mean, the core rule book had a very limited amount of space that we could put in there for non-player characters, and these division books were an opportunity to give you a broader cast of characters to drop into your game. So if you needed a Starfleet intelligence agent, or you needed a stock admiral to drop in, admiral or a badmiral, whatever, we dropped in Luther Sloan. So like, depending on what version of Section 31 you're playing with, if you want to use Sloan, why not? Here he is.
Sorry, you said admiral. I've never heard that before. That's great.
I picked it up from fandom somewhere. I mean, it's fitting, but
I love that.
It's a funny term. And we got some major characters in here, especially for the Corps of Engineers chapter. We got Captain Zimmerman. Of course, that's named after Zimmerman, who was involved in so much production. Admiral Harriman. Captain Harriman was the captain of the Enterprise B. He went on to become an admiral, and I think he was one of the main characters in the Starfleet Corps of Engineers novellas. I think he was important in that. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read them.
Again, I always do a shout out for amazing focuses. The focuses of both Zimmerman and Harriman are amazingly detailed, which gives me way more to work with than a general broad. When Zimmerman, I love, has weapon array configuration and technological innovation. And then Admiral Harriman has Romulan Star Empire, quantum singularity technology, which makes sense, and sabotage and personnel management. I just really let you know what these characters are doing. I love it.
Broad array of abilities. Oh gosh, I forgot we got Brahms in here. We got Dr. Brahms in here. That's cool.
We all I
had forgotten.
We all have a crush on her.
Well, yeah.
Well, her holographic side, at least.
Well, I mean, both of them, right? But whatever. We won't go into detail.
I will say,
other than to say, poor Geordi. What a messed up character Geordi was. I swear. It was like talking about ethics at the business place, right? I mean, that's so wrong in so many ways.
Then the other person he fell in love with on that array station, who had like the demo dog.
Oh yeah, super awkward.
Yeah,
poor Geordi. I mean, not poor Geordi, because that was kind of heinous what he was doing, but just such a terrible, not terribly written, but just they gave him the hard luck stuff. But anyway,
he got replaced by Harry Kim. Harry Kim had way worse experience.
He had it pretty bad. Yeah.
I do want to thank Modifius for including the quartermaster role on page under Starfleet personnel. We forget that any good Navy ship needs a quartermaster to take care of things like resource management. I know on our game, it became a major NPC, even the wife of our captain. So who's cleaning the room every day of all the executives and the VIPs, and what kind of relationship with that person who has this intimate go in and water the plants kind of relationship, or make sure the staff is watering the plants. You never see them on any Star Trek shows. I was like, and so after I saw Quartermaster, I was like, wait a second, this person is in your face every day. They're the person who makes sure your room is in order if you're going to have guests and your replicators working. So it ended up that we made this a character and they fell in love. The captain fell in love with which was really cool, and became a major part of our story. So one entry like this can make such a difference in a game.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Michael, I have to ask, because I know you're a big fan of the artwork, right? What was your initial reaction to the artwork on page 94?
Okay, right away, I looked at it and I was like, who is the person who was drawn in there? It's a real person. And I don't know who it is, but I know it must be an artist, a writer, or one of their friends. So who was it?
Are we talking about the same piece of art?
Wait a second. I'm looking at, yeah, so hovering over, 94. I'm sorry, I'm back on page 90.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Real quick. I'm going to share a screen for people who are
okay.
tuning in.
Yeah, we're talking about different pieces of art. That's okay.
Okay.
Talk about yours first.
Because I wanted to talk about this one. So let me go ahead and share screen real quick so everyone sees what I'm talking about. I am talking about the picture in the Jeffries tube. It looks like this alien creature is injured, very bad wrist injury. And this person here looks so real. I had to figure it was a real person that the artist drew in.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I thought, just looking at the piece, the artwork, I was like, wow, that is so realistic. I mean, that it's unusual to see that level of realism in our artwork, honestly, because it's so vibrant. And I honestly don't know who that is. I'd have to do some research and find out who did this piece of art, and then reach out to them and say, well, what's the story? Just because I'm curious.
Okay, we got to do that at some point, because I've spent time staring at it, trying to look. I looked through the names. I was like, is this one of the artists or something? Mm-hmm. Going back to the art you're talking about now, of course, this is badass. I mean, you got Gorn. Yeah. I mean, who's this TOS level character who wants to duke it out with a Gorn?
Right? And I know you say it all the time that when you see a piece of art, there's a story in here, right? There's so many stories in here. I want to know who this. He's clearly like an ensign, red shirt. He might even be enlisted. Who's this red shirt ensign enlisted man who is like, you know what? I'm going to take a swing at this Gorn and deck him. And he's probably got what's the talent? Mean right hook.
Mean right hook for sure.
Right. This is the textbook picture for that. If we were ever to do cards or something and we wanted to do an illustration of mean right hook, this is the one I'd use. But this is just like this is original series, bravado right here in one picture.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that picture. Good call on that one.
That's great.
Yeah, that is a story. You got my mind going right now. I got to get focused back on. We're doing a podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
I also like, again, just some of the other roles that are dropped in here that people have really got to look at these, especially if you don't want to play a bridge character and you want to play a lower decks game. I looked at 95, you have the Starfleet engineer's mate. And I was like, have we ever seen that? But that's actually a very important role on any kind of Navy ship too, a ship's mate, an engineering mate. And so again, this caused me to add one to our game, because I was like, okay, if you're going to do supporting character, let's build it off of some of this pre-made cool stuff that's in here. And I love that he had they had the focus quick fixes. That's different than jury rigging. That's different than kit bashing. Quick fixes means a whole different thing to me. So I thought that was a really neat addition there. All right. Closing out this book is the red alert section. Talk to us about that, Jim. I could say I've never used this, but what did it play to?
I'm going to have to go back into the dusty recesses of my brain to remember, because again, at the time I was a writer and an editor on the game. I wasn't actually the line manager yet. And I was, I was doing a lot for the line at this time. This was like, 2017, 2018. And I know at one point, we, the collective, Modiphius, developed these red alert rules, which was intended to be more of a detailed miniature kind of combat version of Star Trek Adventures, right? Because we had the miniatures at the time, and we wanted to do, or the powers that be wanted to do a more comprehensive like miniatures combat game in the Star Trek Adventures mindset. And so they developed this whole like 22, 23 page red alert rules set that we provided for free as a download. In fact, you can still go to DriveThruRPG or to the website and download it for free. And somewhere along the way, they decided, let's include it in the operations book. And I wasn't involved. This is how far back these books go, right? I wasn't involved in that conversation. I just heard a lot about it secondhand. And I'm certainly not going to question it. But if I had been in charge at the time, I think I might have found a different thing to do with these 20 pages, especially given that this rule set was already available for free as a download. I wouldn't have made use of the page count for that. I would have found something else to do with it for operations and for science. But I mean, that's 2020 hindsight being what it is. So this was intended to give players and game masters an opportunity to do a more tactical kind of miniatures combat game thing with their miniatures in the game, if that's something that they wanted to do. So we included rules and movement and combat rules. There's also a page of tokens in here, or a couple of pages of tokens. I think that the intention was that you would Xerox it and photocopy it and cut it out, right? So we put it on a white background to make it easier to reproduce. So that's
Xerox it while you're in your jacuzzi eating your. Sorry, I'm using all the branded names.
Yeah, mark it up with your Sharpie.
Yeah, exactly. So while with your Post-it note in your hand. Okay, so I want to stay. I'm looking at my Borg cube. The Borg cube set, which came out, of course, had tokens and it had the maps and all that. So it seems like if you have that Borg cube and are wondering what to do with all those little pieces, the operations division has that rule set incorporated in here. So if you want that 3D adventure, there's optional role play here. Different RPGers want different things. Some people want to LARP. Some people want to play on Discord around the table. Some people want 3D action, and Star Trek Adventures gives it all. So that's 23 pages of how to play that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I would be curious to hear from folks, on Discord or the Facebook group or Reddit. I mean, wherever you chat about the game. If you've actually used the Red Alert rules or are still using them, I would love to hear about it, because honestly, in 5 years of being on social media for this game, I'm not sure I could tell you if I've had more than 2 people talk about them in any depth to say, like, I'm actually using them in my game, or I've actually used them in my game. Not to say that they're bad. I don't know that I've heard of anybody use them, and I'm just curious to know if anyone's using them, and if so, how and how well, and do you like them or whatever. Mostly just curious.
I definitely see a lot of people focusing on miniatures and making miniatures. So yeah. I don't know if they're just doing it for the art of it or playing Red Alert.
I don't know.
But either way, like I said, the operations division book, again, stellar, just like the other 2 command division books we'll be finishing, or the command division and the science division book, which we'll be covering next time. Anything you want to close out talking about operations division supplement?
Again, I think just looking at these fresh again after a while, I appreciate all over again just how much stuff we managed to cram in here. And I think like Michael said earlier, like if you are running a game and you want more ideas, or you just need some flash of inspiration, grab one of these division books and just kind of flip through it, grab a random page. I'm confident something will jump off the page at you and say, make a story out of this. But also, if you've invested in the player guide and the game master guide, think of creative ways to combine them.
Yeah.
I shoot even the tricorder set. I'm not plugging, but I'm just thinking about all the content that's in the tricorder set and in the Shackleton book. All that stuff fits. All that everything is a toolbox, right? So everything's meant to work together. Even the discovery book, like there's stuff in this operations book I'm confident you could apply to a discovery game, and it would be pretty seamless.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and speak, on behalf of the writers. I know that you give us clear instructions not to purely repeat what is in the other books. You tell us to be original. And so I know I'm paranoid when I'm writing and kind of double checking myself to make sure that I'm not using these cutting, pasting information, but really trying to come up with new innovative tools for game masters and players to use to make their game more lively. So these again, the operations book is excellent for that purpose. All right, well, let's get to our shout outs, Jim. Really good review of the operations book. Look forward to seeing you next episode when we talk about the sciences book. I'm going to give a shout out to Game On in Chattanooga. That comes from Mark Copton, who wanted to give a shout out, and also Fox Comics and Games in Marion, Illinois, from Benjamin Sloan. Ooh, Sloan, how weird is that we had a come in and give a shout out during the Section 31 story? That's not a coincidence, Jim.
Unintentional. Yeah, very cool. Oh gosh, who do I want to thank? There's so many people, so much time. It's so hard because like we've done so many episodes now. Of course, I have a never-ending list of people I can thank, but let's thank the writers of this operations book, because again, I don't know that I hear the operations books being talked about enough on the various social threads and stuff. I think there's so much great content dropped into these books that if you have an opportunity to grab them, either right off the websites or in your local game store, they're all in print, right? I mean, we're keeping everything in print as long as we can. So yeah, check them out. I mean, if you need more details as a player, especially, there's great depth of content in here. And then if you're a game master looking for something new and cool to enter your game, thank all the writers and developers of this book. And I can't count myself because I was peripherally involved. I did some editing and some writing, but Sam led the charge on this one, and I think he delivered a great product.
Fun stuff. It's standing the test of time 4 years in. So that's great. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining this continuing conversations. It's always fun as we explore Star Trek Adventures RPG, trying to help you make your games even better and stand the test of time into eternity. Until next time, I'm Michael Dismuke signing off.
Live long and prosper. Be safe. Be well. You didn't do your IDIC thing. I guess you're skipping it tonight.
IDIC.
There you go. All right. Tradition. See you next time.